Good morning, Mark Sott with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. It is October 6, 2020. Talking about very dangerous Hurricane Delta down in the Caribbean Sea right now, going to impact the Yucatan, Cancun, and vicinity over the next 24 hours or so. Very likely as a Category 4. Will not surprise me at all if this becomes a Category 5. I'm going to show you some things that are absolutely remarkable and very concerning related to this hurricane for the Yucatan, and then we're going to talk about the impacts in the Gulf of Mexico and what it's looking like for Louisiana, as well as not just Louisiana but a good part of the Deep South as this makes landfall, the grand finale, so to speak, of the 2020 hurricane season. At least we hope this is it. It has been a long season. We have dealt with a lot, and we have to deal with Delta here this morning. So the headline from the National Hurricane Center says it all, that the NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft reports that it continues to rapidly strengthen, and the wind is 110. It's probably stronger than that now. Air pressure 962 millibars as of the 8 a.m. intermediate advisory. Couple things to point out here. The main advisory package, where you get a new discussion and a new update to the forecast, those usually come out 4 times per day. 5 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m., 5 p.m., and 11 p.m. I'm just saying these all in Eastern time. Sometimes they will issue a special update if needed. Maybe there is a rapid intensification period, and maybe they update some things in between these advisories, and they might issue a new discussion around that. Think about Hurricane Charlie. I remember Hurricane Lily in 2002. They did that, and there's other examples. But normally, 5 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m., 11 p.m. In the intermediate advisories, we get those at 2 p.m., 8 p.m., 2 a.m., and 8 a.m. Those are just public advisories, generally updated with intermediate information. Sometimes there's reports from the recon, etc. And you usually don't get a new discussion, this forecast discussion right here. You don't usually get those in the intermediate advisory unless there's something important to discuss beyond what is in the public advisory. So I just wanted to point that out in case you were wondering. That is how the advisories are done. All right. The satellite imagery here this morning is remarkable and not in a good way. You look at this and you just have to be in awe. A very, very small, what we call central dense overcast in here, or CDO. A very round appearance and a small eye. The NOAA Hurricane Hunter indicating that the eye was about 6 miles in diameter. That is what we call a pinhole eye. You also see there's these little white speckles right in here near the core. That is lightning near the eye, indicating very, very intense upward motion in the atmosphere. Very intense cells around that very small eye. The core is tiny, and it's going to be able to conserve that energy and really bundle it around that core to the best of this planet's physical fluid dynamics and thermodynamic ability. And that's just the science of it. It's the way it goes. More than likely, this will become a Category 5. I think that it will. Why not? It's got plenty of time over this water. The atmosphere supports it. It's a very small system right now, and it should just keep on deepening, possibly in the low 920 millibars. Wouldn't shock me at all. We see this reach 160, 170. That is not going to shock me at all before it reaches the Yucatan. After the interaction with the Yucatan Peninsula, I think some interesting structural changes are going to happen that are going to affect what goes on in Louisiana later on. All right? So first up, there's grave concern for our friends down here in the Yucatan. Luckily, the small size of the hurricane is going to prevent a good deal of the worst effects from impacting the Caymans over here, Grand Cayman and the islands to the east of there. Still some leftover far peripheral showers and occasional thunderstorms over Jamaica. But the small size of that central dense overcast, the CDO right there, That's going to keep the worst of the conditions away from Grand Cayman. That's good news for them. But for Cancun, right up here on the tip, and maybe south towards Cozumel, I think it's going to be closer to Cancun. We'll see. This area that I just highlighted in red is in grave danger here of a landfall of a potentially Category 5 hurricane. And the category matters, yes, but then again it doesn't. A Category 4 or a Category 5, whether it's 150 or 160, this is going to be a very, very dangerous hurricane for the Yucatan. So people in Cancun, you've already had to deal with the impacts of Gamma, which those remnants are still percolating over here. You see all that lightning in there, a little bit of upward motion going on, convective activity with that. And then along comes Gamma. And the track that this is likely going to take, bringing it towards Cancun over here and vicinity, the only saving grace is this is a small hurricane, relatively speaking. The hurricane force winds do not extend out very far. It's not a very large hurricane, so I guess that's one good thing. So think of it in this situation for Mexico, for Cancun and vicinity, the Yucatan. This is more like a precision strike from like a Tomahawk missile, so to speak. I'm trying to put this into a way that you can understand it. So a fairly small area is going to be impacted, and that's the good side. You know, it's not going to be a very large event in the extent of hurricane force wind, storm surge, and that kind of thing for the Yucatan. For Louisiana, I believe it's going to be a far different story, and I will explain in just a moment. One of the things that's fueling this clearly would be this very high upper ocean heat content, and all along the path that this still has in front of it before the Yucatan, it's nothing but high upper ocean heat content. That's all it is. And so this has the ability to bottom out at whatever the Earth can sustain. You know, if the upper air pattern is perfect, this could potentially become a historic hurricane. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Remember that intensity forecasting is where the least amount of skill lies as mere humans. We just don't have a good handle on it. Computer modeling doesn't have a good grip on modeling and understanding the inner core. And let's go back to this satellite animation one more time. Imagine that the numeric models are trying to figure out what's going on in that tiny core where convective activity, the thunderstorms, are going up and changing every second. It's so dynamic in there, it is more different than the weather is on Jupiter, what's going on in the core of that hurricane. It is. It's absolutely one of the most alien things that there is on this planet. The rapid rotation around that core, the violent updrafts that are going on within those towers that come up, and the hurricane hunter planes that are going in there, they have to deal with that. They have to go through there, bank, and get back in. I mean, it is very, very dangerous when you have these small pinhole eyes, but it also means that it's really bundling that energy, and the ceiling here is very high for where this can end up. And like I said, I'm not going to be shocked at all if it becomes a Cat 5. So that's the upper ocean heat content all the way in towards the Yucatan. Then when we get in the Gulf of Mexico, this is where things become very interesting, and the interaction with the Yucatan is going to make all the difference in the world. First, let's address this from the heat content side of things. Let's assume that Delta comes across here like that, clips the northeast Yucatan. It's moving at a fairly steady pace. It's not lollygagging along, and it comes over here, and then it makes that turn, and it heads up towards the east side of Vermilion Bay. Let's assume that this track that I have painted ends up being exactly right. Okay? What do we notice here? A couple of very important things. First, it would only clip a fairly small portion of the Yucatan, and that area is fairly flat overall. It's not a big rugged area like Haiti or the eastern side of Cuba, for example, and so it's not going to have a lot of land interaction. It's also moving very steadily. It's not slowing down and getting hung up down there like Wilma did 15 years ago later this month. Wilma came into that same area, stalled, hung out, kind of rotated around for a little bit, had land interaction, the core got disrupted, and it had a lot of work to do. But here is what is very important, the key to this, and I want you to understand. Right now, we have that pinhole eye. It's going to come across here and make landfall somewhere along the Yucatan. Once that happens, the core will be disrupted to some degree. The friction of the land will slow down the lower levels of the atmosphere. The core is going to get disrupted. It's like a Ferrari going along perfectly, and just a small little ball bearing gets into that engine and it messes it up. Very small ball bearing, something like that. I'm trying to put the analogy here. There will be a disruption of the core. Now, you might think in Louisiana, that's a good thing. It's going to weaken. It absolutely will weaken over the Yucatan. But the problem is, think about what happens if you've ever seen a figure skater, male or female, doesn't matter here, we'll just say a figure skater, the skater, and they are spinning and they pull their arms in and they spin really fast. That is that conservation of angular momentum. What happens if they have an accident? Maybe they lose their balance, just something isn't right, and they foul up, and it's just a disaster. They unravel, their arms come out, and they flail everywhere, and everything is spread out. You've seen that before. It's a terrible sight. Honestly, you go, oh my goodness, I feel so sorry for that skater. But what happens is the energy gets spread out over a larger area, and the skater slows down. And in that situation, they slow down, they go off the floor, maybe they continue on, whatever. In this situation, it's kind of the same principle. Delta will run across the Yucatan, and the core will be disrupted, and that'll cause the wind field to expand as it tries to regenerate itself and regain its composure, like the figure skater would once it reaches the Gulf of Mexico over here. So we're going to be left with a larger eye that's going to start over and a larger wind field than we have now. The hurricane is going to grow in size. I know I could have just said that and saved the whole analogy thing, but I'm trying to educate you here. I want you to understand in your brain, the left side and the right side of your brain, how this works is in layman's terms, where you can wrap your brain around this. It's an amazing process. Unfortunately, when these things interact with land, and even over the open ocean with oil interest and shipping interest, etc., the human-hurricane interface often has very bad results. So once this gets out into the Gulf, I expect it will re-strengthen. It's going to lose a little bit over the Yucatan. And then the other thing that I want you to take note of, and this is important as well, the ocean heat content through here is decent. It's not so bad up through here either. It's only right up near shore there that it drops off pretty quickly. But it's not like when we see something going up into the Canadian Maritimes, where you leave the Gulf Stream that's 26 Celsius, the north wall of the Gulf Stream, and you go into Nova Scotia or Newfoundland, and the water temperatures there are 20, 18, 15 Celsius or whatever, talking 50, 60, 65, 70 degrees. The water temps in the northern Gulf right up here against the coastline of Louisiana are only 78, 79 degrees, somewhere around there. And you'll probably find a few spots that are cooler than that in the shallower water. But this week, high pressure is building in. There's no fronts. The sun is still relatively strong. The temperatures are not going to cool off anymore, and they might even come up a little bit. There's still energy getting input into the Gulf, and as if it's not getting stirred up, there's no fronts coming. I noticed that the high, I think today and tomorrow is going to be in the mid-80s down here in Louisiana. So we're not going to shave it off anymore. Time has run out for that. The fronts that we came down, yes, that's very good. Those fronts are very good. Those knock the sea surface temperatures down a little bit, and that'll really help. And from the wind perspective, this will start to weaken it better as it comes in But the storm surge, I think, is going to be massive down here because we're going to end up, like I said, with a bigger hurricane as this turns the corner. I think the wind field is going to be much larger up here. And then it's going to go inland. And we're going to have a big problem for areas inland. So let's address that real quick. First of all, and by the way, this is the tracking map that we have as part of our HurricaneTrack Insider service, our Patreon-supported service. And I'll talk about that at the end here. But this is what I use it for. It's a great tool. So we see the warning information, and I like this because we can take that off if we want to. And let's do that. Great job by Will Woodgate from over in the UK. I cannot wait to meet him in person. He has done such a great job. So this illustrates my point that Delta comes across, assuming that this forecast track is spot on. There's Cancun right there. So in this situation, because it's so small, following the little line there, the blue line in this case, they sometimes call it the skinny black line, but in this case the skinny blue line, I think it will matter because the worst of the wind is pretty much going to be that little dot right there around the number 4. It's fairly small. So, you know, if it makes landfall here, yeah, it's going to be nasty in Cancun, but that's different, and it really is going to matter. If the radius of maximum winds is only a few miles, if the core comes in just a little bit north of this line and puts Cancun in the core. This is a situation where the core is everything because it's such a small system. So there's no way to know this far out. So you folks up here, anywhere from Cozumel, Playa del Carmen, points north, you're going to need to be ready for this. You know, pure and simple. No waiting around trying to see, well, I don't know. You got to get ready. This could be really, really bad. But this illustrates my point. If it only kind of cuts off that little corner right there, that's not a lot of time over land. And, you know, sure, the southern part of the cone of uncertainty here, maybe it comes in more south and goes over much more Yucatan. That's going to result in an even larger hurricane back out over here. And it just changes things a lot for I said New Orleans, maybe, for Louisiana. So once it gets out into the Gulf, it's expected to re-strengthen from whatever losses it incurs energy-wise over the Yucatan. And then it comes in here. Let's switch over to the street map so we can get our place names. Then it comes into Louisiana. And I know that some of the modeling, especially the Euro, was suggesting somewhere over near Lake Charles. Hope not, because that's just wrong if Mother Nature does that. But Mother Nature's not evil. It's not anything. It just is. It is what it is. We're the ones that are in the way, so to speak. We just have to adapt and try to do the best we can. Anyhow, as it stands, the forecast is for this to make landfall on the east side of Vermilion Bay over here. And if we look at the different cities down here, we know we have New Orleans over here to the east, Houma and Grand Isle down here, and then Highway 90 stretches all through here, Morgan City over to Lafayette, and then all the different places in between. You have the Atchafalaya River Basin that comes down through here, and you know, different cities, Sycamore Point down here. You know, there's a lot of vulnerable area, and depending on how large the wind field expands, you could potentially have surge all the way up into Highway 90, for example. All of this down here could be underwater because I think the wind field is going to expand pretty significantly from where it is now. Obviously, any substantial shift to the right towards New Orleans paints a very potential dangerous picture for them and the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, especially if the wind field gets larger. Absolutely do not pay attention to that number 2 right there. Screw the category in this case for Louisiana. Throw it out. Don't think about it. It's going to weaken from a 4 to a 3 to a 2. What are you so worried about, Mark? It's a 2. We've been through worse. Okay, That's the wind. That's the Saffir-Simpson wind. It's not about surge and, other effects, rain. In this case, it is the storm surge that I'm going to be most concerned with, and that could be equivalent. You need to think of the storm surge as potentially catastrophic. 10, 15, 20 feet, we'll see what the storm surge unit says from the Hurricane Center. But the Louisiana coast over here, over to Mississippi especially, Mississippi Sound, this could be a very bad surge, okay? And we don't know what's going to happen. A shift over to the left a little bit or to the west, it changes things. It makes the Vermilion Bay area up towards Abbeville and maybe New Iberia more at risk. Lafayette, perhaps. Baton Rouge. You shift this over to the west a little bit more, and Baton Rouge is in play for direct impacts from the right side of this. Bottom line, Louisiana is in trouble. There's no way around it. We're not going to sugarcoat this. It's going to be bad. Don't worry about the category. That's the wind that we're talking about and the pressure relationship probably. And yes, it's going to weaken pretty quickly before it reaches the coast. We're hoping. But hope, as I say, is not a planning tool. You cannot simply base everything on, well, hopefully, it'll all be okay. Look how that's turned out for something else that we're dealing with. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Wishing something away doesn't help. And that's not going to help with hurricanes, that is for sure. After landfall in Louisiana, and we're going to address this more and more over the coming days. We only have a few days left anyway, then it's all happening. This is going to go into interior portions of the Deep South. So Mississippi, inland Mississippi, this is your hurricane too. Birmingham, Alabama, up towards Huntsville, and eventually maybe even Nashville, this is your problem too later on. A tremendous amount of heat energy is coming out of the tropics. This is going to be a big problem for a good part of the Deep South. Power is going to be knocked out. We're looking at a major disaster getting ready to unfold, more than likely. It's not guaranteed. Strange things can happen. You never know. But again, you don't want to hope and just say that everything's riding on hope. Hope's a good thing, and I want you to have hope, but please plan with that, okay? You have to have a plan. A couple other analysis tools. Gulf of Mexico, as I was saying, has cooled off. I'm going to use white here to illustrate this. 26 Celsius is right here. That's the 26 Celsius line. And that's about what you need to sustain a hurricane. So the area that it's supposed to make landfall in is right through here. And the water temperatures drop off 25, 24. So we're talking about mid-70s or so. Much less energy. The thermodynamics will change through here. But depending on how fast it goes, it may not have time once it makes that turn to weaken all that much. And that's, again, the wind. And yes, the wind is a big deal. But it's that surge that it'll be pushing that I am most concerned with. And like I said, the next couple of days with the sun out over this area through here, water temperatures might come up just a smidge. Probably won't make that much difference, but nevertheless. We've already looked at the maps, so let's take that away. So real quick, my coverage plans, and if you already are a part of this, and you want to tune out now, I understand. This is about how we're going to cover it, how you can get involved, all right? It's not a sales pitch. It's how we do what we do. HurricaneTrack and all that we do now is 90% crowdfunded. I do have a relationship with the Weather Channel, the national media. That they've been around as long as I was a kid, right? And I grew up with them. And I do work with them, and they license the video to show on the air. But most of the funding, especially in the off season, comes from you. How do we do it? We do it through Patreon. That's this right here. At the $10 level and higher, you have access to all of this HurricaneTrack insider stuff that I've been showing you, and a bunch of other stuff as well. And the main thing I need you to understand, it's not a subscription service in the traditional sense where you pay money, you get a product, and that's the end of it. It's one way. You don't buy an app, buy a service, and look at stuff, and that's it, and it's just one way. This is three-dimensional. Literally. It's very interactive. I've met some of the people that are involved with this. It is crowd-funded, but the crowd is also involved beyond the financing. The financing is how we pay for it. So it starts at the $10 level and goes up from there, and whatever works for your budget. The idea, though, is that collectively we can do great things. So what happens is you sign up here on Patreon, your email address you enter here on HurricaneTrack.com's homepage, the same email address that you use when you sign up with Patreon. That gives you access to the Hurricane Track Insider homepage, which is here. These are the different folks. That's Brent. This is Javier. This is Kari. This is some of their screen names. There's Nikki, Mike. I mean, these are all real people. These are the folks that are making it happen. We have our own homepage, our own dashboard, so to speak. You have access to the tracking map, which I showed you already. The live cams. This is what that looks like. A little bit of a list here of what's going on. We got the dashboard. This will change. These will all get filled in. Just to let you know, I'm taking at least 8 cameras with me, and hopefully 10. I'm working on getting a couple more active. We will have 2 vehicle cams, one in my vehicle, one in Brent's, and 8 unmanned cameras, maybe more cameras than that. 2 cameras running off of one hotspot. That's technical stuff. Don't worry about it. Bottom line, we're going to have a lot of live cameras out there. In addition, we're going to have the GoPro cameras going that just record. These guys right here, these Hero 4s, we have a whole bunch of these. Those record video. I show those to our supporters first. You guys have access to this. You're funding it. You are the investors. Get the word out. Talk about it with people. I mean, $10 a month, if you stretched it out to $120 a year, for most people, that's a pretty good deal, considering we can't go to the movies anymore like we used to. And what we're doing with this is far beyond anything that any other website has out there. You also have access to all of our original stuff, the documentary series, even my old stuff dating back 15 plus years ago. It's all in a nice gallery. It's almost like our own little Netflix, if you will. And it's all funded at $10 a month or $25 a month. This has different perks. There's benefits. Try to reward you for funding this unique and innovative project. How do you do it? You go to patreon.com/HurricaneTrack right there. The link is also in the description of the video. Talk about it with your friends, your family, coworkers. It's a good thing to invest in because what we do with it can help you. It really does. It's my business. Yes, I got to make a living, but this is how we fund it. So there you go. Also, I am on Twitter. There you go, @HurricaneTrack. Special thanks to, by the way, let me go back to that chat that I was showing you. See that name down there, Spooky? That's who does these graphics here, Kari. We know her as Kari from over in the UK. We got a lot of UK, United Kingdom help, if you will, assistance on a lot of levels. Anyway, I'm on Twitter. I just wanted to make that clear. All right, bring me back up so I can sign off and put this thing on YouTube and get ready and get out of here. I'll be leaving in just a little while. I'm going to meet up with Brent, either in Atlanta or Mobile. I hadn't figured it out yet. We're working on it. He's flying up from the Virgin Islands. And Brent is, by the way, one of our biggest partners in Patreon. He's actually an active participant. He and I are going to work with Greg Nordstrom. We're going to cover this thing in Louisiana like nobody else can, at least on the internet. I mean, the Weather Channel has got I don't want to say monopoly. It sounds negative. But they do it very well from a network perspective. And I think we do the best we can on the internet for our small little operation. And when we merge the two together, some of my cameras on the Weather Channel, I think that's pretty awesome. And hopefully you do too. So tune into the Weather Channel. You'll see these cameras on there as well. All right, I'm done. I'll be traveling. We'll be posting updates. Jack will be posting updates as well. Thanks for everybody supporting this, however you're doing so. Just watching the video, sharing the video. Make sure you like the video on YouTube so it becomes more popular. And get the word out. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I've done this for 25 years. I know what I'm talking about. I don't know everything, but I'm trying. You guys have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks as always for listening to me. I hope you learned something. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll see you next from the Hurricane Highway.